Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere warm, rhythmic, and just a bit sandy underfoot. Picture yourself standing at the edge of Saint Louis, Senegal, in the year 1745. The air is soft and damp from the nearby Senegal River, and the rising sun throws molten light across the thatched rooftops. Palm fronds shift in the breeze. Someone's goat bleats with a tone that could only be described as judgmental. And already, the market is stretching and yawning to life. You're barefoot because, well, most people here are, and because it helps with the feel of the earth under your soles. Cool for now, but you know that heat is coming. The ground is still quiet, a kind of pre-market calm before the chaos. A dog trots by with very important dog business, namely barking at absolutely nothing. You pause for a breath. There's a scent in the air already, wood smoke, river mud, and maybe a hint of grilled millet cakes. You're not sure if you're hungry or just trying to stay awake. This place, this tiny colonial island town at the mouth of the Senegal River, is technically French. You'll see the tricolor flag eventually, but don't be fooled. It flaps next to Wolof-speaking traders, Lebu fishermen, Fulani herders, and a mosaic of others whose lives have twisted together like threads in a woven mat. You might even glimpse a Moorish merchant with salt slabs strapped to a donkey. If you ask 3 people who's in charge here, you'll get 5 answers and a lecture on taxes. You probably won't survive this time period, to be honest. Between tropical diseases, colonial schemes, and the unnerving abundance of crocodiles, your odds aren't great. But you'll smell wonderful and be well fed before anything unfortunate happens. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first steps into the market, just as the morning haze begins to lift. A boy runs past with a bundle of papyrus under his arm. 2 women balance baskets on their heads, laughing about something you can't catch. The stone-paved paths are uneven and glossy with morning dew, and you have to hop a little to avoid a puddle that might be more than just water. The wooden stalls are still being set up, curtains tied back, goods unwrapped, fires coaxed into life. You're early, but not alone. You pass a man sweeping the entryway of his stall with a broom made of stiff grass. He nods at you. His stall sells dyed raffia fans and small calabash bowls, though right now it's mostly just an open space filled with smoke from his breakfast fire. He hums a song that doesn't seem to have a beginning or end. Historians still argue whether St. Louis functioned more like a French outpost or a thoroughly African trading hub with a few unwelcome guests. Walk far enough and you'll find signs of both. The French fort with its thick white walls, the local neighborhoods pulsing with food, music, and business that predated any European arrival by generations. You pause at a raised wooden platform where a woman is arranging handfuls of cola nuts in small piles. Some are better, some sweeter, all caffeinated enough to kickstart your day better than a double espresso. She waves you over with a gap-toothed grin and offers you one to chew. You chew it politely, your mouth goes instantly dry, your tongue slightly numb. She cackles. By now, the sun has found its stride, and the ochre mud walls around you begin to glow. Chickens scratch the dirt with a kind of manic purpose, and somewhere, someone is definitely playing a djembe drum with more enthusiasm than skill. It's oddly comforting. Near the center of the market, there's a water well surrounded by hand-carved wooden stools. A group of women are taking turns filling calabashes, their arms practiced and smooth. You lean against a shady acacia tree and watch. There's no rush. Markets here aren't just for buying and selling. They're for news, gossip, and seeing who's wearing what. One woman's outfit has patterns shaped like birds. Another's head wrap is stacked so high you wonder if it has its own personality. And suddenly a goat tries to eat your sash. You wrestle your cloth away with only moderate dignity. A nearby boy laughs and offers you a mango slice as consolation. You accept. It's slightly sour and impossibly juicy, dripping down your hand before you can stop it. This, you think, is breakfast. Sticky, tangy, possibly stolen from a goat. From your new vantage point, you can glimpse the Senegal River glinting in the distance. Canoes, long and narrow, slide along the water like whispers. Some carry fish, others spices, and one seems to be overloaded with woven baskets and exactly one duck. You start walking again, the rhythm of the market beginning to rise. Metal pots clang, people shout greetings, and you can smell something new on the breeze. Maybe grilled fish, maybe just the ghost of lunch from yesterday. Either way, your stomach growls in agreement. The market isn't arranged by category. Not really. It's more like a living organism. Griots next to tailors, palm wine beside iron tools. Some parts are dense and chaotic, others spacious and calm. There's a certain logic to it all, but it's the kind of logic that only makes sense if you've been coming here since birth. You pass an elderly man seated beside a bundle of carved walking sticks. He's dozing, hat pulled low. One of the sticks has a handle shaped like a snake swallowing its own tail. Another has a tiny carved crocodile on top. You reach out to touch it, but the man stirs and mutters, "It bites." You withdraw your hand. So far you've been bumped, bartered with, mildly insulted by a bird, and politely offered 3 herbs that promise to keep mosquitoes, curses, and annoying cousins away. It's shaping up to be a very typical morning. You turn the corner, and the market opens wider. The air thickens, with possibility. You press forward. The smells hit you before the stalls do. Warm millet porridge, wood smoke, and that slightly sour, unmistakable scent of fermenting fish. Not unpleasant, just assertive. You wrinkle your nose and immediately feel bad about it. Someone's grandmother is stirring that very fish into a pot with clear purpose, and you suspect she's been making this exact dish longer than you've been alive, possibly longer than France has had a king. To your left, a small breakfast stall is already doing brisk business. 2 wide metal pans sit above glowing charcoal beds, each crackling softly. One has thin millet pancakes bubbling at the edges. The other holds strips of cadfish, curling as they sizzle. A woman with gold hoops in her ears and a toddler strapped to her back flips both with impressive speed, barely looking down. She waves you closer with a spatula and points toward a small bench. You sit. What else can you do? She tears a chunk from a round loaf of bread and sets it beside a mound of spicy sauce, then slides a piece of fish on top like it's the most natural thing in the world. You nod your thanks and bite. Your tongue immediately regrets underestimating her spice tolerance. The toddler watches you with what can only be described as smug amusement. Nearby, a group of men crouch on low stools, passing around a calabash filled with lafidi, a watery millet porridge sweetened with date syrup and sometimes thickened with ground peanuts. One of them beckons you to try. The drink is cool, surprisingly refreshing, and a welcome reprieve from the fire-dancing sensation currently inhabiting your mouth. Behind them, a vendor fans her small fire while roasting slivers of baobab leaf, which she'll later grind and stir into sauces, or use for treating stomach aches, depending on who's asking. She sells powders, teas, and things in jars that look vaguely magical. A calabash painted with concentric circles swings from her stall's awning, rattling softly in the breeze. You wonder if it's a decoration, a trap for spirits, or just her version of a "no haggling" sign. Historians still argue whether early Senegalese markets were primarily female-run economic engines or extensions of household barter. Based on what you're seeing here, the women here are doing 90% of the work and 100% of the commanding. One seller lifts her eyebrow at a customer who dares to question the price of her theactry, a creamy millet dessert speckled with raisins and served cold. The customer folds instantly. As you continue your slow, slightly spice-addled stroll, you reach a shady corner where smoked fish are stacked in pyramids, each one more fragrant than the last. Flat, sun-dried specimens lie curled like punctuation marks on woven mats, and thicker cuts hang from wooden hooks like damp socks on laundry day. One elderly vendor gestures toward a particularly fearsome-looking fish head. She says, "This one's lucky," in Wolof, grinning. You nod like you completely understand and quietly edge away. Not far from her is a row of baskets filled with wild ingredients: baobab fruit with its dry, chalky flesh, monkey bread pods that look like something fallen from space, bundles of lemongrass and tamarind tied with twine and stacked neatly. A boy lounges nearby, holding a fly whisk made from a horse's tail. He flicks it lazily, not at flies, but at his younger brother, who's busy attempting to catch one with his hands. You hear a vendor humming softly as she ladles a thick stew into a clay bowl, mafe maybe, the peanut-heavy comfort dish known across West Africa. She sprinkles something green over the top. Moringa leaves? Mint? Something secret, no doubt. She sees you watching and lifts the bowl as if offering a toast. You nod in return. It feels rude not to. Someone's chicken escapes underfoot, flapping into the stew zone and prompting 3 people to yell simultaneously in 3 different languages. You flatten yourself against a nearby basket of cassava roots to stay out of it. Crisis averted, the bird is returned to its crate, and a woman mutters something about bad omens and reckless poultry. A bit further on, a group of women are peeling oranges with small curved knives, slicing them in spirals so neat they could be used in geometry class. They drop the sections into small cups and top them with chili powder and salt. You buy one. It's sweet, acidic, and burns just enough to make your eyes water a little. Worth it. One of the women, her hair wrapped in bright blue cloth, leans toward you conspiratorially and whispers something about the fishmonger 2 stalls over being a better dancer than businessmen. You thank her for the intel and make a mental note to observe the fishmonger later, preferably during some form of wedding-related merriment. Even in this corner, music seems to bubble up from nowhere. Someone's drumming with a half-empty water jug, someone else is singing a song that may or may not be about donkeys. A girl claps in perfect rhythm while carrying a basket of peppers on her head. The market isn't loud exactly, it's just full of sound, of life, of breakfast happening in a dozen different ways all at once. You pause at a table where round, spongy rice cakes are stacked beside bowls of crushed hibiscus petals. The seller shows you how to mix the two with a little sugar and water to make a tart morning treat that stains your fingers bright red. You feel like you've committed a delicious crime. She grins and presses another cake into your hand. "For later," she says. There's an old man under a tree nearby, sharpening his knife with a smooth stone while whistling a tune that loops every 5 seconds. His stall is modest, just a few smoked eels, some dried shrimp, and a mysterious item wrapped in banana leaf. He unwraps it slightly to show you. It's fermented locust beans. The smell is advanced. You nod respectfully and back away. As you walk, your senses begin to settle. The market's no longer a blur. You start to pick out the rhythms, the rise and fall of voices haggling over porridge, the rustle of raffia skirts as women pass by, the periodic whoosh of someone fanning coals or swatting flies. By the time you round the corner and return to the well, the fishmonger is indeed dancing. It's subtle, just a sway of the hips as he scales his fish, but there's style in it. You nod, conceding the point. Breakfast here isn't just a meal. It's half theater, half negotiation, and entirely a sensory bath. And you've only seen one sliver of it. You step around a puddle of spilled tea, duck under a rack of drying mango slices, and keep walking. The salt traders await. You hear them before you see them, the scrape of baskets on the ground, the soft thud of woven mats being unrolled, the rhythmic clink of carved spoons tapping on salt slabs to test purity, or maybe just to sound dramatic. As you round the bend, the air shifts. It's drier here, more metallic on the tongue. You're in the salt cellars quarter now, where white dust clings to everything, wrinkles, nostrils, and the occasional goat. The salt comes from the north, mostly. Caravans from the Sahara, heavy with slabs cut from ancient salt pans. Some even bear the stamp of Tawadeni, a mine so remote that by the time you've trekked there and back, your camel probably has an existential crisis. Still, this salt is currency, both literal and cultural. People will trade gold for it, bread for it, secrets for it. One woman crouches by her display, carving delicate curls off a large slab. She sprinkles the shavings into a shallow dish, letting passers-by taste it on their tongues like it's wine. You try a pinch. It's coarse and powerful, like licking the memory of a long-forgotten ocean. She nods approvingly and says, "Good for goats, better for husbands." You don't ask what that means. Behind her, a younger girl stacks salt in neat pyramids. She has chalky fingerprints on her forehead and zero tolerance for bargaining. A man attempts to haggle. She stares at him for so long that you start to feel awkward. He pays full price. Historians still argue whether these market zones were formally arranged or simply grew organically based on who showed up early and refused to move. Either way, the salt traders have staked their claim on this corner, and it's unlikely anyone's dislodging them soon. It's not just the slabs. They also sell bundles of dried herbs, and sometimes, discreetly, little sachets of gossip. As you watch a sale conclude, two women lean together and start whispering. Their tones shift between amusement and disbelief. You catch snippets, something about a young man, a stolen tunic, and possibly a disastrous wedding. They don't look up when you pass, but you're pretty sure you've just been included in the story, if only as a footnote. A small group of boys chases each other around the back of the salt stalls, shouting and kicking a ball made from tightly wound rags. They dart past a trader resting her feet in a wooden bowl of cool water. She doesn't flinch. That kind of calm is earned. A few stalls down, a merchant sits surrounded by wooden bowls filled with various salts, coarse gray, pinkish grains, even one that glitters faintly like crushed seashells. He's telling a story to a circle of listeners, waving his spoon like a baton. You ease closer and catch part of it, something about how salt was once used to trap a genie in a calabash. He shrugs and adds, or maybe it was just a goat with very good manners. Hard to say. In the space between two stalls, an old man is selling small wooden amulets carved in the shape of fish. Protection, he says. Salt keeps evil away. Fish bring the good. You look at the carvings. Some are simple, others elaborately painted with ochre and charcoal. One has a tiny piece of mirror embedded in its belly. He taps it and whispers, "Reflects lies." You buy it, mostly out of respect, and maybe just a little superstition. To your surprise, there's a bit of music here, too. A woman sits cross-legged on a mat, drumming her fingers against an upside-down gourd, the rhythm soft and slow. Not for dancing, you think, for listening, or for making gossip sound more dramatic. Either way, it adds a heartbeat to the salt quarter. You're drawn toward a low canopy strung with woven palm mats. Underneath, a few men sip something from small ceramic cups. It's not tea. One offers you a sip. It's salty, smoky, and... is that tamarind? You're unsure whether it's a drink, a broth, or a dare. You thank him and pretend your mouth isn't doing a small rebellion. In the back, past the main trading ring, you stumble upon a stall less interested in culinary salt and more in symbolic salt. Here, the seller lays out small packets tied with red string. Some are to be buried under your doorstep. Others, she says, must be tossed over your left shoulder precisely at sunset, on market day, after hearing a dog bark 3 times. Don't mix them up, she warns, smiling far too cheerfully. You believe her. Children dart in and out of the stalls, their hands dusty, their feet even dustier. One of them sells salted peanuts wrapped in cone-shaped banana leaves. You buy a bundle. They're warm and oddly soothing, the salt lingering on your fingers like a souvenir. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows through, stirring the powdery air. It lifts a flurry of salt dust that sparkles momentarily before settling again. For a moment, everything smells sharper, cleaner, a little ancient. One woman claps her hands and announces that her supply is fresh from the earth's old bones. You have no idea if that's poetic license or a geology lesson. There's a cart nearby, loaded with baskets of smoked salt and dried onions, the mix of aromas somehow both harsh and sweet. A man sits beside it, snoring softly, his donkey, unfazed, chewing something that was definitely not meant for it. You step carefully over a sleeping dog, round the corner again, and find yourself back in the flow of the market's main artery. Someone calls out about roasted peanuts. Another sings about soap. There's a faint scent of cloves now, and your fingers still taste faintly of sea. You've learned more than you expected. Salt is not just seasoning, it's spell, symbol, and soft social power. You pat the fish-shaped amulet in your sash and continue forward. The air warms again. The ring of iron grows louder. The smiths are just ahead. At first, it sounds like distant thunder, but softer, more rhythmic, like someone coaxing a storm into dancing. As you step into the ironworkers' quarter, the clanging becomes clearer, a layered symphony of metal on metal, hissing steam, and the occasional oof when someone lifts something heavier than they meant to. Sparks briefly sketch stars against the shaded workspaces, flashing bright and gone. The scent here is unmistakable. Hot iron, charcoal smoke, and sweat baked into the very air. You find yourself ducking instinctively as a smith hammers a red-hot horseshoe into a less aggressive curve. He pauses only long enough to nod at you, then plunges the iron into a shallow basin of water with a theatrical sizzle. A small crowd cheers. Apparently, it was a particularly difficult bend. Unlike the open sprawl of the salt stalls, the smith's area is tighter, denser, pulsing with movement. There's a kind of solemn energy here. These aren't just metal workers. They're craftsmen, yes, but also healers of broken tools, builders of futures, and occasional dabblers in the mildly mystical. One older man is sharpening a plowshare while humming a tune that hasn't changed tempo since you arrived. You suspect he may have been born humming it. You pause near a workbench where a teenager is hammering out what looks like a bracelet. It's still rough, just a band of dark metal with faint carvings beginning to emerge. You ask what it is, and she replies simply, "For luck," or "for ankles." Depends on the mood. She grins. Her hands are filthy, her smile is radiant, and her earrings, tiny iron crescents, jingle with each swing of the hammer. Historians still argue whether smiths in West African markets held semi-sacred status or were just really well-liked due to their ability to repair broken cooking pots. But here, now, it's clear they walk with a kind of weight. Not feared exactly. Respected. Slightly avoided during thunderstorms. One stall catches your eye. An assortment of small metal figurines, horses, birds, even a tiny lion with a crown. The smith here is younger, shirtless except for a thick leather apron. He sees you looking and gestures proudly to the lion. "Royal gift," he says. "Made one for a chief. This is his twin, less bossy." You pick it up. It's heavier than expected and warm from the sun. He tells you it wards off envious glances. You glance sideways, just in case, and hand it back. In the far corner, a group of older smiths sits in a circle, repairing tools brought in from nearby villages. A cracked hoe blade, a bent sickle, a brass kettle with what looks like a well-documented grudge. One man is arguing that the crack in the kettle was caused by sorcery. Another suggests it was just left too long in the fire. You suspect both are correct. Nearby, a boy watches the process with enormous eyes and a goatish curiosity. The moment someone sets down a cooled blade, he snatches it and runs toward another stall, where he starts polishing it furiously with an old cloth and what looks suspiciously like a piece of fruit. You suspect this is an unpaid internship. There's a stall that catches you off guard. No weapons, no tools, just iron rings, tiny bells, and something that looks like a bird cage but is far too small for birds. You ask. She smiles and says, "For catching spirits." You decide not to ask further. She sells other things too. Iron keys with no locks, and locks with no keys. Amulets wrapped in faded cloth. One particularly curious object looks like a small iron fork with only one prong. She says, to point at liars, silently. You consider getting one for social events. In a quieter corner, a man is engraving names into iron. You watch him etch one with such precision that even the flies hovering nearby seem to hold their breath. You ask if the names are for graves or gifts. He shrugs. Both. Depends on how well the gift is received. Fair point. As you continue weaving between forges and anvils, you realize that the soundscape is oddly hypnotic. Hammer strike, hiss, mutter, a pause. Then again, like a heartbeat made of fire and resolve. Even the goats here seem subdued, as if they too understand that something ancient is being honored. A short man with impressively long eyebrows stops you to show off a tiny dagger he claims was once used to cut the strings of a rival musician's kora. You nod solemnly, pretending this is shocking news and not secretly delightful. He goes on to explain the metal was folded 13 times and cooled in sacred water fetched from the place no maps admit. You suspect that means a well behind his cousin's house. Still, the dagger is beautiful. Not far off, a child has constructed a pretend forge using bits of broken pottery and a stick. She bangs at a rock with gusto, mimicking the smiths around her. A woman nearby watches, arms crossed, shaking her head fondly. She says she'll forge a new moon when she grows up. You offer your encouragement. The world could use a spare. The heat is starting to build now, pressing down with a kind of steamy insistence. One smith removes his head wrap, revealing hair pressed flat with sweat and soot. He fans himself with a broken bellows, muttering about the injustice of fire being so warm. You nod in solidarity and retreat to a shady bench, your ears still ringing faintly from the hammering. You bite into the roasted peanut bundle you forgot you were holding. It's half melted from the heat, but oddly satisfying, the salt still sharp from earlier. You exhale, ears humming, hands warm, the taste of iron still somehow clinging to the back of your tongue. Somewhere behind you, a smith lets out a triumphant cheer. The piece is finished, the shape perfect, the edge sharp. There's applause. Someone plays a celebratory note on a stringed instrument that is definitely out of tune, but played with heart. You stand again, stretch your back, and brush soot from your sleeve. The scent of herbs and something floral drifts into your awareness, curling like invisible fingers around your nose. A new rhythm calls. It's subtler, sweeter. The healers and perfumers are just around the bend. You leave the clatter of the forges behind, and with every step, the air shifts from heavy metal to something altogether softer, layers of mint, lemongrass, and the faintest wisp of smoke from burning incense. Here, in this quieter lane, tucked between the smiths and the cloth traders, the scent does the talking long before the sellers do. A curtain of dried herbs sways gently over the entrance to the first stall you reach. It's more of a canvas lean-to than a structure, but every inch of it radiates purpose. Bundles of plants hang upside down from the rafters. Baobab leaves, neem branches, twisted roots still dusted with soil. You duck inside, careful not to sneeze. The woman behind the stall, maybe 50, maybe 80, sits on a reed mat, legs crossed, grinding dried hibiscus petals with a stone pestle. Her bracelets jingle as she works, each clink quiet and deliberate. Without looking up, she says, "You're carrying too much heat in your chest." You don't ask how she knows. You just nod like a guilty teapot. On her table, calabashes hold colorful powders, red from crushed cola nuts, yellow from turmeric, green from moringa, and a suspicious blue that you suspect involves a very specific kind of lizard. Small vials of oil sit in careful rows, eucalyptus, tamarind, black seed. She hands you a narrow stick and tells you to chew it for your breath. It tastes like bark and regret, but your mouth feels instantly fresher. "Neem twig," she says, "toothbrush of the ancestors." Historians still argue whether these healing vendors were officially trained, spiritually ordained, or simply excellent at storytelling. Here, the answer appears to be yes. One woman wears a necklace made entirely of garlic and lion teeth. Another says she cures headaches with powdered ostrich shell and 3 well-placed insults. Both have waiting customers. Behind one stall, a row of iron kettles bubbles gently. You peek inside and catch glimpses of leaves, roots, and the occasional floating object that looks like it might still be moving. A young assistant stirs each pot like she's conducting a symphony of steam. A man nearby swears his back pain vanished after just one sip. Then he sneezes violently and declares it working. You pause at a smaller table lined with sachets, tiny cloth pouches tied with hair-thin string, each labeled in Arabic script or crude little drawings. One has a bird feather poking out, another jingles faintly when shaken. "Protection from theft," says the seller, lifting one. "This one keeps your feet from wandering too far." You're tempted to ask if that means literally or romantically, but decide to leave it ambiguous. She opens a tiny wooden box and reveals a ring shaped like a scorpion. "Made from meteorite iron," she whispers, "or a saucepan, depending on who you ask." You grin, and she winks, already wrapping it in palm leaf before you've said a word. To your right, a narrow stall bursts with scent. This is perfume territory. Glass bottles catch the morning light, long-necked, squat, spiraled. Inside, rosewater, orange blossom, sandalwood, and others so complex you start to imagine colors when you sniff them. One in particular smells like rain on dust, the memory of firewood, and something sharp you can't place. You point. Love charm, the seller says, or mosquito repellent, sometimes both. A young woman behind the stall rolls perfume onto the inside of your wrist with a carved bone stick. The scent blooms slow and cool, like dusk arriving on purpose. You close your eyes for a moment. She laughs softly. That one's made with crushed cloves and a few drops of lion sweat. You assume that's a joke. Mostly. A curious shape catches your eye, a set of small clay statues arranged in a circle, each with a tiny painted face. For dreams, says the vendor, place one under your pillow, pick a different one each night. You ask what happens if you forget to switch them. He shrugs. Then your dreams get lazy. Honestly, fair enough. In one corner, a healer paints thin black lines across a boy's cheeks with charcoal mixed in shea butter. The boy fidgets, but his mother holds his head gently. To protect from jealous spirits and nosy aunties. That last part gets a laugh from the other women nearby. You're starting to notice that a good healer is part chemist, part gossip, part stand-up comic. You pass a table filled with animal carvings, each made from bone or horn, shaped into amulets. Some are lions, others crocodiles, and a few are fantastical creatures with wings and long curved tails. One looks suspiciously like a duck married a dragon. You ask about that one. Dream animal, the carver explains, comes to warn you if someone's talking behind your back. You buy it immediately. Another vendor offers small jars of balm, one for joint pain, one for dreams, one that promises to open your mind, but only a little bit, not too much. You ask if it's safe. She raises an eyebrow. Depends on how much of your mind you're hiding. There's a small crowd gathered under a neem tree where a woman holds court with her remedies. She's dabbing a paste on someone's foot, talking the whole time. Stories of ancestors, of battles fought and healed, of how she once cured a man's stubborn cough by making him laugh for a full hour. You stay and listen for a while, caught in the gentle lull of her voice. Even the breeze seems to slow here. The perfumed air, the warm shadows, the low hum of voices. It's like the market is breathing differently in this corner. You sit for a moment beside a pile of empty calabashes and sip something handed to you in a clay cup. It tastes of mint, citrus, and something bitter at the end, like a secret it won't explain. Your fingers smell like cloves now. Your feet are dusted with powdered bark. You may or may not be wearing an invisible protective charm that repels nosy people. You feel oddly safe. But just as you begin to nod off on the cool shade of your bench, a voice calls out, loud, proud, and laughing. Who wants cloth that sings in color? You look up, ahead, the world bursts into fabric and dye. The cloth traders are waiting. The first thing you see is color. An impossible riot of it. Fabrics hang like banners from every post and beam, swaying gently in the breeze. Indigos so deep they look like the ocean at midnight, sun-splashed yellows that practically hum, and reds that seem to vibrate at a frequency reserved for mischief. You squint. Somewhere in this textile forest is a stall that probably sells invisibility cloaks for especially dramatic toddlers. As you step closer, the dust softens beneath your feet. Trampled bits of cotton and stray threads muffle your steps. The air smells faintly of dye and wood smoke, with a hint of soap berries used in the washing process. You pass under a canopy where cloth is strung out like a drying octopus, twisting above your head in every shade imaginable. Someone giggles from behind a bolt of tie-dye so intense it might cause hallucinations. The cloth traders, almost entirely women here, size you up instantly. One pats a stool and beckons you to sit while she unrolls a bolt of fabric across your lap, clearly unbothered that you haven't yet asked for it. It's soft as breath and smells like it's been kissed by 1,000 rinses in the river. She slaps the edge once for emphasis and says, "Imported, but not too imported." You don't ask what that means. "Feel that," she continues, pressing your hand against the weave. "Egyptian cotton, dyed in Keno, stitched by my cousin's husband's first wife." You nod, as though the cousin's husband's first wife is a respected name in the international fabric scene. Historians still argue whether the markets of West Africa were importing more cloth than they produced, or vice versa, but here, now, nobody's keeping score. Fabrics from Timbuktu, Morocco, India, and France mix with local indigo, wax prints, and cotton spun under trees by women singing lullabies to their feet. The vendor across from you slaps her knee and shouts, "Bah! Wax print is only loud to hide its cheapness." She gestures grandly at her stack of hand-dyed Bogalen fini, mudcloth, dyed in layers with fermented mud and leaves. This one speaks the language of the soil. She flings a folded piece toward you with theatrical flair. It smells slightly swampy and utterly sincere. A man nearby, no taller than your shoulder and twice as loud, declares that his imported Dutch wax fabric has patterns that predict the weather. "Look," he insists, pointing at a print with tiny umbrellas. "It rained the day this one arrived." Coincidence, probably, but you nod solemnly. Further down the lane, a young woman dips cotton into a vat of indigo dye. She lifts it slowly, watching the cloth oxidize in the open air, turning from yellow-green to deep blue right before your eyes. It's like magic, but slow and messy and slightly smelly. She hums a tune while she works, hands stained to the wrist with dye. You catch a few lyrics, something about husband who tried to leave and came home wearing his wife's headscarf by mistake. You meander through more stalls, brushing your fingers across rows of fabric with names like Tree of Life, Anansi's Teeth, and Hurry Home, He Might Be Watching. Each print has a story, and the vendors are more than happy to tell you. Whether the story is remotely true is not the point. You pause at a stall selling pre-cut wrappers, long rectangles of cloth used for everything from skirts to baby carriers to emergency picnic blankets. The vendor here points at your sash and says, "Too plain. You want something with drama." She hands you a wrapper printed with large, overlapping fish. You ask what it means. She grins. "Very fertile." You carefully place it back. Nearby, a mother is fitting her daughter for her first boo-boo, the loose, flowing robe worn by women from Dakar to Niamey. The child turns slowly as her mother pins the cloth in place, the girl's face scrunched in concentration. It's a rite of passage, and everyone in earshot is offering opinions. Too long, too narrow. Why is she frowning like an old man? The child rolls her eyes with such skill you're tempted to applaud. Suddenly, you hear a commotion from 2 stalls over, someone shouting, fabric flying. You whip around just in time to see 2 traders in an enthusiastic dispute over whether a certain pattern was invented locally or stolen from the Portuguese. A third woman inserts herself into the conversation with the authority of a market elder and declares, "It doesn't matter, whoever made it first, we wear it best." This is met with a chorus of "mm-hmm," and the matter is settled. A few vendors also sell thread, beads, and sewing tools, needles made from bone, spools of dyed cotton, even fishbone thimbles that double as charms. One woman is threading tiny glass beads into a hem, her fingers so fast you think she might actually be part spider. In a corner stall, an old man sells used French military uniforms, painstakingly deconstructed and reshaped into local tunics. He grumbles that the fabric is tough, but good for insults. It keeps its shape when slapped. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you accept it as market wisdom. At another table, a woman is laughing so hard she has to sit down. You catch the tail end of the story. Apparently, a man bought matching cloth for himself and his wife, only to discover it bore a traditional pattern worn by women mourning their third husbands. He wore it to a wedding. Even the goats stopped chewing. You let the laughter wash over you as you sit on a low bench, the scent of dye still clinging to your sleeves. You watch as a boy walks by wearing a hat made from scraps, every patch a different story stitched together. Someone calls him a walking proverb. He just grins. You glance down at your own clothes, slightly dustier now, a bit wrinkled, maybe faintly fragrant with cloves and fish, and feel oddly part of the scene. Maybe next time you'll wear something bolder. Maybe next time you'll bring fabric home. But for now, you rise again. A chicken runs past with half a scarf in its beak. You follow the sound of laughter and squawking around the next bend, where children are hollering, feathers are flying, and someone's losing at chess. You round the corner and immediately have to duck. Something feathery hurtles past your face with a shriek that is either chicken or child. You glance sideways and see that it was both. A chicken, recently liberated from its rope leash, is now under hot pursuit by 3 children who seem to think shouting will make them faster. One trips, rolls in the dust, pops up laughing, and joins the chase again. You decide this is probably the most athletic moment of their entire day. Here, in what might generously be called the recreation quadrant of the market, structure gives way to play. The stalls are fewer, more spaced out. Some vendors lounge on mats. Others have spread out canopies with no goods at all, just shade, conversation, and whatever snacks someone remembered to bring. There's a slower rhythm here. It's like the market took a breath. You pass a row of crates that seem to serve no particular purpose other than seating for small bottoms and small arguments. A girl no older than 8 is locked in a serious game of wurei, a local variation of mancala, with a boy who is cheating so subtly you almost admire it. She catches him, slaps his hand with impressive authority, and announces she wins by default. He sulks dramatically. Next to them, a group of older boys squats around a makeshift chessboard scratched into the earth, pieces fashioned from cowrie shells, pebbles, and for some reason a dried chili pepper as a queen. The game is intense. One of them stares at the board with such concentration you'd think the fate of the kingdom depends on it. A bystander whispers, "He's lost 3 games today. If he loses this one, he has to sing." You decide to stay and watch. Historians still argue whether these casual play areas evolved as intentional market features or just filled a natural human need for distraction. Either way, they now pulse with laughter, yelling, and the occasional shriek when someone realizes they're sitting on an anthill. A small girl tugs your sleeve and offers you a palmful of fried dough balls. Beignets, golden brown and still warm. You reach for one, and she yanks the basket away at the last second. "Trade," she says, chin lifted. You give her a pebble from your pouch, formerly part of the chess set you now suspect, and she graciously offers 2, one for now and one for later, if you behave. You suspect she may already be managing a small business. A gaggle of toddlers is clustered around a low wooden frame strung with thin twine. It's a homemade loom, and one older girl is demonstrating how to weave thread into neat, crisscrossing lines. The others mostly slap the strings or try to put the shuttles in their mouths. Still, it's education, sort of. Under a neem tree, you find a man balancing an entire bowl of peanuts on his head while singing a song that goes, "My donkey speaks French, but only to strangers." You don't know if it's a proverb, a warning, or a marketing strategy, but several people are clapping along, so you do too. The peanut bowl never wobbles. A boy saunters by holding a homemade flute carved from a hollowed stick. It plays exactly 2 notes, both off-key, but he's so proud of them he insists on serenading a group of goats tied to a post. The goats seem unimpressed. One bleats back a single, unimpressed note. Audience participation. A small stall is offering dried tamarind pods and small fruit drinks in calabashes painted with stars. You sip one, it's tangy, slightly fizzy, and makes your lips pucker involuntarily. The vendor grins. That's how you know it's good. A loud crack draws your attention. You turn to find a group of teenagers engaged in a high-stakes game of mbube, a traditional board game made from a grid scratched into the ground, with seeds or stones as pieces. The goal? Outmaneuver the lion, or be the lion, or something involving lions and trickery. The rules are debated loudly every few minutes, but no one seems to mind. Nearby, someone has drawn a chalk circle and is attempting handstands. 3 children take turns, 2 of them clearly doing their best, one doing something that resembles a collapsing crab. Laughter erupts with each fall. A woman watching with her basket of smoked shrimp laughs so hard she nearly spills her wares. She says, "Better to fall now than fall at your wedding." The chickens make another appearance. 3 this time, running with what looks suspiciously like part of someone's scarf tangled around one foot. A small dog joins the pursuit, purely for the joy of it. Nobody catches anything. Everyone cheers anyway. At the edge of the play area, a young man sits cross-legged, carving tiny animals from leftover gourd shells. He offers you one, a lopsided lizard with too many toes. He says, "It's good luck, but only if you pretend it's something else." You thank him and decide it's now a dragon. One child hands you a folded leaf. Inside is a tiny drawing, charcoal on papyrus, depicting what might be a family, a goat, or a particularly dramatic storm cloud. She says, "For you, it's your fortune." You ask, "What does it mean?" She shrugs. "Don't eat too many mangoes." Honestly, fair. As you rise, you notice a group of adults sitting nearby, quietly watching the play unfold. Their smiles are soft, their eyes relaxed. This, you realize, is the heart of the market. Not the trade, not the gossip, not even the fish, although very important, but this, the noise, the games, the children sticky with fruit and joy. One woman catches your eye and says, "If they're playing, it means we're still doing fine." You nod, tuck the lucky gourd lizard into your sash, and move on. The air changes again. A crisp scent, a sudden hush, and then a colonial official with suspiciously clean boots blocks your path. He stands like a misplaced chess piece. Powdered wig, high-collared coat, white stockings far too pristine for a man allegedly walking a dirt market. His boots gleam in a way that suggests either magic or a very enthusiastic servant. You blink. He blinks. You both wonder, silently, who is more confused by this encounter. "Ah," he says, brushing an invisible speck from his lapel. "En promeneur, are you?" The French is precise, the tone mildly amused, as if you've just wandered into his private salon by mistake. You nod, offering a neutral smile, hoping it translates as "just browsing, thanks." Behind him, 2 local scribes stand with ink-stained fingers and wide eyes. One is dutifully copying notes onto parchment. The other is holding a ledger and trying not to drop it every time a chicken wanders too close. This is clearly part of someone's inspection tour, or maybe a data collecting mission disguised as one. The official peers at your sash, your beads, your slightly tamarind-stained sleeve. "Interesting fabric," he murmurs, reaching out. You take half a step back, not rudely, just firmly. He withdraws his hand and nods again, lips pursed. Dutch wax? Or perhaps Senegalese adaptation? His voice lingers on the question like it's a puzzle he's been trying to solve for years. You shrug. It was raining when it arrived, you offer helpfully. He frowns, possibly suspecting mockery, but lets it go. He gestures broadly to the surrounding market. "You know, the French crown is quite invested in the civilizing mission here, commerce, order, agricultural development." He says all this while standing directly next to a pile of mangoes being pecked by a very uncivil goose. You nod politely, even as the goose honks in what feels like protest. Historians still argue whether colonial officials stationed in Senegal during the 18th century were primarily bureaucratic observers, economic opportunists, or simply people who had run out of luck back home. Judging by the anxious way this man's eyes dart toward the nearby tailor threading a needle with what appears to be deliberate menace, it's possible all three are true. He lifts a slim notebook and begins asking questions. Where were you born? Do you own land? Do you speak any European languages? Have you paid your stall tax? You respond with a mix of shrugs and deliberately ambiguous smiles. It works better than you'd expect. The scribe scribbles each answer with the speed of someone eager to get back to his lunch. The other one, clearly newer to the job, asks if your shoes are made of local leather. You look down at your very bare feet and say, "Yes, very local." The official makes a note. He tries, bless him, to make conversation. You know, the new trade routes are opening up all sorts of possibilities. I'm told Timbuktu has been quite sleepy these days. Perhaps this town will surpass it in importance. You nod, but silently recall that Timbuktu was never particularly bothered about competition. It's got its manuscripts. It's fine. At some point, the conversation turns toward religion. The official hesitates, then asks delicately whether you've embraced the proper forms of worship. You glance around at the market, where the call to prayer mingles with drumming, and at least one stall is currently burning incense while chanting over a chicken feather. We're quite diverse, you say. He writes that down too, probably under concerning. A group of schoolboys in loose tunics darts past, one of them balancing a large bundle of chalk on his head. The official stiffens as they bump him. He tries to smile, but it comes out more like a grimace. One of the boys turns, bows dramatically, and says, "Sorry, great white chief of mud and ink." The scribe snorts. The official pretends not to hear. In an attempt to recover dignity, he straightens his cravat and begins talking about the fort, how it's recently been reinforced, how the engineers had trouble with the sand, how difficult it is to get proper mortar on this side of the Atlantic. You offer a sympathetic noise, while privately wondering why anyone would build a square fortress in a town shaped like a fish hook. He gestures toward the northern end of the market, where palm trees lean over low stone walls. We're considering relocating the administrative building there. Better view, less noise. You both pause as a goat knocks over a basket of lemons with a clatter like thunder. Well, he concedes, less noise might be optimistic. There's a sudden stir from behind. A griot has arrived with his drum, and a small crowd is forming. The official tenses, visibly unsure whether this counts as a permitted gathering. You excuse yourself with a gracious nod, and he accepts your departure with relief disguised as dignity. As you walk away, one of the scribes whispers, "If he tries to tax the goat sellers again, they'll curse his wig." You both laugh softly. You don't look back, but you imagine the official already dusting off his boots with righteous indignation. You reach the griot's corner just as he taps his drum for silence. The market shifts again, as if the air itself leans in. The stories are about to begin. The first beat is soft, like a polite knock at a familiar door. Then another, slower, deeper. You feel it in your chest before your ears even register it. Boom, tap, tap, boom. A rhythm older than the dust beneath your feet. The crowd that's gathered leans inward, eyes soft, mouths quiet. You find a place beneath the wide shade of a neem tree, the kind that creaks just a little when it's about to share something important. The griot is seated cross-legged on a reed mat, his drum between his knees, fingers already dancing lightly across the stretched hide. His robes are dusty but dignified, faded indigo with embroidery that catches the sun in places like whispers of gold. Around his neck hangs a small leather charm, possibly for protection, possibly for show, Probably both. "Salam alaikum," he says, nodding slowly to his listeners. Then he begins. Tonight's story is about a man who tried to outrun his own nickname, a tale passed down from grandmother to grandson, carried across generations in market stalls, under mango trees, and whispered through cracked doorways when the moon was nosy. The man's name was Lai, but no one called him that. No, they called him Lai the Lizard, because of how he'd slither out of debts, promises, and marriages with the same oily charm. Lai, the griot says with a grin, once tried to marry 3 sisters without any of them knowing. When the story reaches the part about how all 3 showed up at his compound with frying pans, the crowd erupts with laughter. Beside you, someone offers you a cup of ataya, the sweet, minty tea brewed slow and strong, poured with flair from great heights into tiny glass cups. You accept. The liquid is hot enough to command respect and sugary enough to soothe your soul into compliance. Someone says it's the second pour, the best one. The first is strong like death, the second smooth like life, the third gentle like love. The griot shifts into a new tale without warning, this one older, darker, and slower. It's about a river spirit who fell in love with a fisherman. She made him promise never to fish again, and when he broke his vow, she turned his canoe into a crocodile and his net into weeds. Historians still argue, the griot says slyly, whether it was a crocodile or just an angry cousin with good timing. The children are silent now, eyes wide. The older listeners nod knowingly. You can feel the story threading itself into the roots of the neem tree, curling into the dust like breath, settling over the market like evening mist. Someone offers you a miswak, a traditional toothstick freshly trimmed from the arak tree. You take it, chewing one end to fray the fibers. The taste is sharp, herbal, with a slightly peppery bite. You glance around and see others using theirs idly, almost like a meditative gesture. A vendor taps his miswak against his knee in rhythm with the drum. The griot pauses to sip tea, then leans forward, eyes gleaming. "Now," he says, "I tell you about the goat who outwitted a tax collector." There's a chorus of appreciative murmurs. Everyone loves this one. It begins with a goat named Ndaye, who allegedly could count better than most clerks. One day, a greedy official tried to seize her for unpaid market fees. Ndaye, instead of running, sat down and refused to move for 7 days. 7! On the 8th day, she stood up, walked straight into the official's storeroom, and ate his entire record book. She declared herself debt-free, the griot adds, deadpan. Laughter bursts from the crowd. A woman behind you wipes tears from her eyes. Even the skeptical boy who lost 3 chess games earlier cracks a smile. You realize now that griots don't just tell stories. They carry them, polish them, live inside them. They're part historian, part comedian, part subtle revolutionary. Their words shift shape depending on who's listening. A joke to some, a warning to others, a comfort to those who need it. The drumming picks up again, not louder, just more complex. The rhythm begins to dance, echoing the cadence of the story. Even the market seems to respond. A breeze lifts the edges of cloth, a bird trills from the rafters of a nearby stall. Someone far off sneezes rhythmically. The final story is brief but poignant. A girl who planted a mango seed with a lie on her tongue. When the tree grew, its fruit tasted bitter to everyone but her. The lesson is unclear. Maybe truth sweetens life, or maybe mangoes just don't like secrets. The griot leans back, lets the final beat fall into silence. People sigh. The crowd disperses gently like smoke after incense. One woman lingers to thank him. A boy asks about the crocodile story again. The griot waves them off with a smile and starts cleaning his drum with a rag that looks older than most family trees. You stretch your legs and take another sip of the ataya, now lukewarm but still potent. The sugar crystals cling to the bottom of the cup like stubborn opinions. Someone next to you says, "He only tells the crocodile story on good days." You nod as if you already knew that. You press your lucky gourd lizard in your sash, just once, still warm. And as you rise to move on, the smell of roasted beans and something earthy floats past. It's gold and glass beads next, where trades sparkle and glint with every whispered price. Followed the shimmer, not a light exactly, but that particular glint of sun off polished surface, of intention meeting material. Around the bend, the air grows drier again, but richer, too. There's a faint sweetness to it now, like roasted shea kernels and dust. You catch the sound of soft haggling, voices low, measured, occasionally punctuated by a sharp clap or an exaggerated sigh. This is where beauty gets transactional. At the center of it all, a woman sits behind a velvet-lined board upon which flecks of gold are neatly arranged. Not nuggets, not coins. Dust, glorious glittering gold dust, heaped in tiny piles that you could miss if the light shifted slightly. It doesn't sparkle like in movies. It gleams, subtly, like it knows you'll come to it eventually. The woman has eyes that do not blink easily. She nods as you approach and gestures to the small handheld scale beside her. It's a delicate balance, two small wooden trays suspended by cotton thread, swaying gently with the weight of things that have shaped empires. She lifts a cowrie shell and places it on one side. Then, with the tiniest spoon you've ever seen, she adds gold dust to the other. "Trade?" she asks, arching one eyebrow. You check your pouch, a gourd lizard, a piece of indigo-dyed cloth, a sachet that supposedly repels gossip. You offer the lizard. She squints, leans forward, and, after what feels like a full moon cycle, nods. A fair story deserves a fair weight. You receive a bead in return, translucent, the color of wet clay after rain. You have no idea what it's worth. You feel inexplicably richer. Historians still argue whether gold dust trades were fixed to standardized values or simply guided by mood, charisma, and ambient weather conditions. From what you're seeing, all three appear to be in effect. The neighboring stalls specialize in beads, glass beads from Italy, cowries from the Maldives, handmade ones crafted from broken pottery and shell. One vendor arranges them like an apothecary, color by meaning, shape by origin, string by prayer. Red for power, he says, holding up a long strand, blue for water, green for fertility, and yellow for weddings, or maybe lightning, depends how much you like your spouse. You try on a bracelet made of carved bone and glass. It fits. You ask how much. The vendor stares at your left ear for a moment and then says, 2 shells and a joke. You hand him 2 cowries and a story you remember from the griot about a fish who sued the river for slander. He laughs and throws in a bead shaped like a bird. You are good at jokes, but terrible at lawsuits. Nearby, 2 merchants argue over whether a particular set of beads are royal. One claims they were blessed by a marabout before being worn by the wife of a lemane, a traditional land-holding leader. The other insists they're just particularly well-polished pebbles from the riverbed. The truth is likely somewhere in between, but the story adds at least 3 cowries of value. At the edge of the gold and glass lane, you spot something different. A man with a large clay bowl filled with not with riches, but with sand. He smooths it flat, then pours gold dust on it in careful lines, creating patterns that shift and shimmer. It's not for sale. It's a test. Proof of purity, artistry, maybe patience. A small audience watches silently as he forms a spiraling sun. When he finishes, he tilts the bowl and lets the whole design collapse. Everyone sighs, as if they've just witnessed the truth about life itself. Probably have. A young girl sits nearby threading tiny yellow beads onto a single strand. Her fingers move quickly, confidently, and she hums something that sounds like a lullaby sung by a rooster. Her mother sells bead stringing services by the hour. She also offers relationship advice, though I suspect only one of those is formally advertised. Someone offers you a palm-sized mirror edged in bronze. It's slightly warped, the kind that makes you look like you're smiling even when you aren't. The vendor says it's from Egypt, or possibly just shaped by someone who once read about Egypt in a poem. You hand him one of your new beads. He says you overpaid. You say you don't care. Just then, the quiet clinks and murmurs are broken by a sudden bark of frustration. Two traders are arguing over a trade. One has glass beads, the other claims to offer, quote, rare gold dust from a place no camel can reach. The dispute escalates with the addition of an onlooker who insists the gold is actually crushed snail shell mixed with regret. A small crowd gathers. You casually drift away, cradling your honest bone bracelet and uncontroversial mirror. You pause by a stall filled with seed beads shaped into miniature animals, a coiled snake, a crocodile mid-bite, even a tiny bat with wings you can flex. The seller grins. Bees are for dreams, he says. You hold them at night, and they take the nightmares first. If they survive, you keep them. You pick the bat. It seems brave. The sun shifts overhead, catching your new bracelet and reflecting a thin shimmer across your arm. You see others squinting into the brightness, adjusting head wraps, lifting water gourds to their lips. A woman walks past with a basket of honeycomb, trailing sweetness in her wake. A man balances 3 bolts of indigo cloth and a rooster on one shoulder. The market doesn't slow. It simply tilts gently towards its next rhythm. And you, glinting slightly now, drift with it. The scent of fermented fruit rises in the air ahead, strong, fizzy, unmistakable. You're about to wander into the palm wine corner, where wisdom is thick and opinions are, flexible. The change is immediate. Where the gold and beads had a kind of hushed sparkle, here the market hums low and earthy. The air thickens with the tang of fermented fruit, the rustle of raffia roofs, and the ever-present bass line of chuckling uncles. You know you've arrived at the palm wine section, not just by scent or sound, but by the way time itself seems to loosen its belt. Under a canopy stitched together with palm fronds and old fishing nets, you spot the first of many gourd flasks resting in cool clay bowls. A man with a shirt that gave up long ago waves you over. "First drink is for listening," he says, pressing a half gourd into your hand. The liquid is cloudy, off-white, and smells like a cheerful fruit had a long, unchaperoned night. You sip. It's tangy, lightly fizzy, and oddly calming, like coconut water that's been on a personal journey. Around you, elders recline on mats and upturned crates. Their sandals are off, their shoulders loose, and their conversations circle slowly, like vultures that aren't quite sure what they're circling yet. One woman leans forward, making a slow point about marriage. The man beside her nods, then counters with a long story about the time his cousin eloped with a camel herder and never came back, but sent really good letters. Someone nearby raises their cup and declares, "The mango is the truest fruit. It lets go when it's ready." A round of nods follows. Another voice pipes up, "But the cashew will climb your teeth and make you earn it." Debate erupts. 2 men nearly fall off their stools in exaggerated dismay. A woman just sighs and says, "The best fruit is the one someone else peeled." General agreement. Historians still argue whether palm wine gatherings were a true political forum or just where opinions went to ferment. But here, it's clear. This is where decisions are made, slowly, sideways, and with excellent snacks. You're handed a leaf-wrapped parcel. You open it to find a warm, spiced yam cake, slightly crisp at the edges. Someone asks if it pairs well with palm wine. The woman beside you says, "If it's bad, you'll blame the wine. If it's good, you'll write a poem." You take a bite. You're definitely halfway through a poem. The center of the gathering is marked by a large clay jug, cool, dark, with a carved gourd ladle resting on top. Refills happen communally. One man, clearly self-appointed as pourer supreme, handles the task with all the gravity of a moon ritual. You try to serve yourself. He stops you with a glare. "You'll insult the ancestors if you measure your own." You step back respectfully. As the palm wine continues to flow, the stories get wilder. A man insists his great-grandfather could talk to crocodiles, but refused to do it after one insulted his hat. A woman insists her grandmother once made a king cry by singing an off-key lullaby with perfect confidence. Someone else mentions a chicken that could count to 5 and died of boredom during a drought. Each tale is followed by a pause, a nod, and often another sip. The laughter comes like tides, sometimes raucous, sometimes just a ripple. And over it all is the scent of fermented fruit, the quiet joy of being fully unproductive, and the distinct feeling that no one will remember exactly what was said, only how good it felt to say it. One elder, long-bearded and barefoot, points his cane in your direction. "You look like someone who's trying to understand everything," he says. You half smile. "Just trying to keep up," you reply. He chuckles. "Good. Understanding is where foolishness begins." Another round of palm wine is poured to honor that wisdom, and possibly because everyone's cups were suspiciously empty. Nearby, a group of younger men is composing what they claim is a political song, though it seems mostly to involve rhyming tax with snacks. The chorus is catchy, if questionable. A woman suggests they add a verse about colonial officials. They agree, but only if she joins in. She laughs, throws her head wrap over one shoulder, and begins chanting in a voice that cracks like thunder over a dusty hill. A fly buzzes past, lazily dodged. A palm frond shifts overhead, letting in a beam of sunlight that lands right in your cup. You sip anyway. Further along the gathering, someone has brought a drum. Not for storytelling this time, but for rhythm. A soft beat starts. More heartbeat than song, just enough to keep time. A boy taps along with 2 carved spoons. A woman claps once, then again. Soon, the entire circle has settled into the kind of groove that only palm wine can summon. Even the goats near the edge seem to sway slightly. One of the elders leans toward you and says, "Do you know the best time to drink palm wine?" You shake your head. He smiles. "Right before a bad decision. That way, when it works out, you're a legend." You raise your cup to that. He clinks his gourd against yours. The sun is starting to dip now, painting the edges of the market in a warm, almost syrupy light. The conversation slows, but doesn't stop. It flows sideways now, branching into dreams, worries, and things best kept vague. Someone says, "We're not drunk, we're remembering." Everyone nods. It's true. Probably. As you prepare to stand, the pourer supreme taps your shoulder. He hands you a small corked calabash. "For the road!" But drink it only when the road forgets its name. You thank him, tuck it into your sash, wonder when that moment might come. You stretch, legs pleasantly heavy, and take a deep breath. The scent of firewood has joined the air now, mingling with incense and something else, briny, tangy, alive. You're near the port district, and it sounds like camels, canoes, and cowrie shells are trading insults just ahead. You know you've reached the port district when the sounds start to layer in chaotic harmony, hooves clattering on stone, canoes thumping against moorings, someone yelling about yams in 3 different languages, and a parrot that's learned to imitate all of it badly. It's not a gentle place, this part of the market. It's alive in the same way a thundercloud is, charged, dramatic, and slightly fishy. The scent confirms it: salt, mud, palm oil, and something unmistakably marine, like seaweed that's had a long journey and no personal boundaries. You blink as a cart stacked with dried fish wheels past, its driver balancing a sack of cowries on his head and arguing with his donkey at full volume. The donkey wins simply by braying louder. The market here spills right to the water's edge. Dugout canoes, some slick with fresh tar, are tied to wooden posts. A few are overloaded with baskets of onions, bolts of dyed cloth, bundles of dried kelp, and at least one goat that looks like it resents its mode of transport. Nearby, long-necked camels chew placidly, ignoring the chaos entirely. They've come in from the inland caravans, salt from the north, hides from the Sahel, gossip from everywhere in between. One canoe unloads slowly, glass beads from Europe wrapped in palm fiber, cast iron pans, and long curved bottles of French brandy disguised in straw. A boy grabs a sack and hauls it up the bank, barefoot and fast. He nearly knocks over a merchant shouting about oyster shells, but both recover gracefully. The rhythm of trade here is frantic, but not careless. You pass a stall stacked with cowrie shells, some still rough and unpolished, others gleaming like coins. The merchant, an elderly man with fingers stained from handling dye and salt, shows you a string of shells tied in neat loops. Currency, yes, he says, but also fortune tellers, game pieces, and bridal necklaces. Depends who's holding them. Historians still argue whether cowries were more symbolic or economic in 18th century West Africa, but here they function like both: tactile history in the palm of your hand. You buy a handful without asking the rate. He counts them out slowly, like a ceremony, and throws in a chipped one for luck or mischief, whichever finds you first. Next door, a man sits cross-legged beside a stack of trade ledgers. You peek over his shoulder and see neat rows of names, weights, prices, and poetry? Every 10th line seems to be a proverb or joke. Helps me remember the numbers, he says without looking up. Also keeps the pages from becoming lies. You nod, not entirely sure what that means, but you trust him more for saying it. A loud clang rings out behind you. You turn to see a fight nearly break out over a crate of cola nuts. One merchant swears they're from Ghana, the other claims Sierra Leone, and a third just wants to know why they smell like they've been stored with onions. Eventually, someone mediates by breaking a nut in half and making them chew it, an unspoken test of bitterness and pride. All three grimace. Peace is restored. Nearby, a group of women sits beneath a wide-reed umbrella, sorting dried shrimp into shallow bowls. Their hands move with practiced speed. One hums a tune that sounds like a sea chanty. Another yells at a passing man, "Your fish smells like it owes me money." He grins, bows, and keeps walking. The whole group erupts in laughter. A camel lets out a grumbling honk. You turn just in time to dodge a large cloth-wrapped bundle being hauled by a trader with a long neck scarf and a knife tucked casually into his belt. His assistant, barefoot, extremely alert, nods politely as he nearly barrels into your hip. "Apologies," he says. "We're behind on the onions. You didn't realize onions could be urgent." Just beyond them is a stall specializing in brass weights, used to measure everything from spices to gold dust. The shapes are curious: birds, snails, a coiled python, and one that looks suspiciously like a toothy gourd. You pick it up. That one's for measuring gossip, the merchant deadpans. It's never accurate. You buy it anyway. The weight is oddly comforting in your palm. Further down, an open square hosts a noisy auction. A man with a voice like a cracked bell is selling foreign tobacco, gesturing wildly with a fan made of bird feathers. The bidders alternate between shouting and whispering. You realize that several aren't even bidding at all. They're just performing roles to confuse the real buyers. It's a kind of theater, and the product is beside the point. Suddenly, the parrot that's earlier lands nearby and yells, "Half price until my mother returns." The nearest vendor glares. "Ignore him! His mother is the price!" The river glistens nearby, swollen from the rainy season. A woman in a wide straw hat washes cloth in the shallows while keeping a stern eye on a canoe that seems to be drifting away on its own. She yells something in Pular, and a boy dashes down to stop it. They argue, then laugh, then resume scrubbing. Life here doesn't pause. It trades hands. A group of elders sits nearby, drinking tea from long-necked kettles. One leans toward you and says, "Camels are good for silence, but canoes remember more." You try to look wise as you sip the offered tea. It's bitter and grassy, probably brewed with river mint and unspoken truths. A vendor beside you unwraps a cloth bundle to reveal rare spices, black pepper, cloves, even saffron filaments carefully folded in paper. "Straight from Saint-Domingue," he claims. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "Or the spice hut by the west wall. You decide what makes you taste better." You purchase a pinch of something smoky and unfamiliar. He hands it over with a bow. That one wakes up meat, or lovers, or enemies. Try not to mix them up. As you walk, your feet coated in fine silt, and your nose full of fish, spice, and iron, you sense the market changing again. The chaos begins to lull. The port quiets a notch. Canoes are moored, camels led back toward their shaded enclosures. Traders pack up, and lanterns begin to flicker near stall posts. A familiar hush spreads like dusk itself, slow and reverent. You follow the sound of water and the softened steps of people turning toward the call to prayer. You're nearing the mosque now, and even the gossip has lowered its voice. The shift is subtle, not so much a silence as a softening. Where before the market jostled and sang, now it breathes, slower, steadier. You follow the path of those moving inward, away from trade and noise, toward a quiet that seems to gather underfoot like cool water in cupped hands. The mosque rises gently above the western edge of the market, its rounded minaret standing like a sentinel made of sand and patience. It isn't grand by palace standards, but it is old, sun-washed, and carefully maintained. Mud-plastered walls glow golden in late light, and a canopy of woven palm mats provides shade for those who cannot, or choose not to, go inside. As you near the entrance, you see the ritual unfolding with quiet dignity. Vendors set aside their baskets, fishermen rinse their arms, and a few children clumsily line up, mimicking the adults. A boy frowns seriously as he removes his sandals, placing them beside a tidy row of others. He catches you watching and whispers, "You don't have to understand the prayer for it to work." Then he runs off, robe fluttering behind him like a comet's tail. You sit nearby under a neem tree, close enough to observe, far enough to remain a guest. Someone offers you a mat. You nod in thanks, unfolding it carefully and resting your hands on your knees. The calls echo out, clear and unhurried. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. It's not loud, just steady, like a breath released after holding it all day. Around you, the market seems to pause, not stop, not freeze, but lower its voice. Even the chickens sound respectful. clucking in a subdued register. The parrot from earlier mumbles something unintelligible and falls silent, as if even it knows not to test boundaries during prayer. Historians still argue whether the integration of Islamic practice into West African marketplaces in the 18th century was more spiritual, social, or strategic. But watching now, you see no divisions, just people folding their days into something deeper, a quiet devotion that slots itself naturally between lunch and bargaining. A woman beside you recites the Shahada under her breath as she braids her daughter's hair. The child leans into her lap, eyes heavy with sun and repetition. Across the square, a man who sold dried mango earlier now murmurs verses as he straightens the hem of his tunic. Even those who do not pray seem to slow, breathe, adjust. A goat lies curled under a fig tree nearby, head tucked against its flank, as if meditating on its own mysterious journey. The prayer begins in earnest, rows of bowed backs, synchronized like waves. You feel something shift, not in the air, but in the pace of your own heartbeat. It's the kind of moment that doesn't ask for your attention, but receives it anyway. Nearby, a girl carefully unfolds a small woven mat, worn smooth at the corners. She spreads it out, dusts it lightly with her palm, and faces east. Her forehead touches the earth with practiced grace. A man beside her coughs softly, adjusts his stance, and continues. There's no fanfare, just motion, meaning. When the final salam is whispered, the release is like a stretch after sleep. People blink into the light again, shift their weight, retie turbans, collect scattered sandals. The market exhales. Life resumes, but more gently now, like a story coming back from a deep breath. You hear soft greetings exchanged. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Some say it with smiles, others with nods, all with meaning. A woman offers you a piece of fresh date, split down the middle to reveal its caramel-like flesh. You accept. It's warm from the sun and sweeter than it should be. She says, to remember sweetness, even when you're full of salt. A group of boys begins to gather their toys from where they'd been left by the waterspouts. Wooden tops, clay marbles, a stick that might have been a sword in another life. One of them holds a lizard in his palm and whispers something to it before letting it go. The lizard skitters into the weeds, thoroughly unimpressed by its role in spiritual growth. You glance toward the mosque again and see a man drawing water from a nearby cistern. He pours it over his hands slowly, then into a bowl of wild mint. He sprinkles the mix onto the path. He says, to cool the stones, simply. You nod. Your feet thank him. The sun, now lower, casts long shadows. They stretch across baskets and mats, across fish scales and bead strands, across the very fabric of the market, and you watch as those shadows flicker, dancing softly with the breeze, like ghosts who remember how to smile. Someone lights a coil of dried lemongrass. The smoke drifts upward in spirals. Children chase it with fingers outstretched, then fall laughing onto the earth. One of them accidentally steps on his sandal. Another insists this is a sign he must marry a girl from the other side of the river. The others gasp. He blushes. They run off to tell her. The scent of tea and roasted millet drifts back into the air. The parrot tries to say something deep, fails, and coughs. Someone claps in response. All seems right. As the last notes of the prayer melt into the rustle of fabric and footfall, you rise again. The sun is almost touching the horizon now. The market is beginning its golden hour, when bargains grow softer and laughter a little louder. It's the time of day when even the vegetables seem to lean into their best angles. And just ahead, you hear it. The calls, the arguments, the sounds of haggling reborn, evening bargains, and at least one questionable deal with a hippo-shaped whistle. You can feel it in the air now, that shift from daytime hustle to twilight improvisation. The sunlight leans low and golden, gilding everything in a way that makes even a crooked yam look like a precious artifact. Prices begin to wobble, stalls loosen their borders, and suddenly everyone is ready to strike a deal, just maybe not the one they offered 5 minutes ago. You wander into a dense row of sellers, their wares spilling like poetry across blankets and baskets. The mood is warmer, looser. You spot a woman offering 3 cassava for the price of 2 and a knowing wink. Another trades a handful of cola nuts for a song, though the customer has a voice like a broken rain drum. They settle on a hummed verse and a mango peel. Someone slaps a woven mat down next to a peanut stall and declares everything must go, though she has exactly 7 items and no intention of lowering her prices. Still, her confidence is contagious, and a small crowd gathers. A boy offers her a lizard-shaped bead. She looks at it, then at him, and nods. Deal. You're jostled gently from behind by a woman carrying a bundle of dried okra pods. She smiles, motions to her basket, and raises an eyebrow. You hold up your hippo whistle. She squints, then chuckles. That's not a trade, that's a curse waiting for a curious child. You laugh, but still offer it. She accepts, mostly for the story, you suspect, and hands you a pouch of ground pepper for your next stew or your next poem. You hear a man shouting at the far end of the lane, waving a fish in one hand and a spoon in the other. "This fish sings," he claims, "only on Thursdays, only when boiled gently." A child dares him to demonstrate. He bangs the spoon on the fish's belly. Nothing. He's shy today, he explains. The crowd applauds anyway. Historians still argue whether bargaining at this hour was more tradition or necessity. Did sellers actually lower prices or just enjoy the theater of pretending to? What's clear now is that the real currency isn't shells or silver, it's charm, timing, and the ability to make 3 onions sound like a festival. As you weave between stalls, you notice a man fan flies from a bowl of spiced lentils, then abandoning the effort entirely to debate someone over whether the moon prefers lentils or rice. A woman nearby interrupts to insist the moon fasts on market days. A third participant offers the idea that the moon, like most mothers, simply eats whatever is left on the children's plates. The argument ends in laughter, and the lentils are declared moon-worthy. A group of girls sits in a circle, plaiting each other's hair and whispering while pretending not to watch 2 boys awkwardly haggling over a single papaya. One of the girls holds a clay whistle, hippo-shaped. She blows it once, and it emits a sound that could only be described as regret in fruit form. You raise a hand in solidarity. She raises hers back. A merchant pulls aside a curtain to reveal a small stash of forbidden goods, French cloth with royal crests, mirror fragments shaped independence, and a wooden comb allegedly carved from the prow of a Portuguese ship. He leans in and whispers, "Don't ask how I got it." You nod. "Don't ask what I'll do with it." He grins, and the deal is struck with a silent palm press. Elsewhere, a woman is carefully arranging her last few wax candles, each shaped like a different animal. One is definitely a camel. Another might be a chicken with ambition. A boy begs for the one shaped like a frog. She tells him it costs 2 songs and a sincere apology. He sings, off-key and with feeling, then apologizes to a passing goat for stealing its yams last week. She gives him the frog. You pause at a table covered in dried herbs, where the vendor is loudly proclaimed the merits of a crushed leaf powder, guaranteed to make your dreams slightly more interesting. You ask how. He shrugs. Colors get brighter, voices get stranger. Sometimes people walk backwards. Sold. Just then, someone bumps into you, a trader with a basket of clay flutes and an air of panic. "Hide me," she whispers. You blink. She ducks behind a stall curtain. Moments later, another trader storms by shouting, "Where is she? She owes me 2 gourds and a promise." You point vaguely towards the sky. He glares. "She always vanishes at sunset, like a mosquito with debts." He storms off. Behind the curtain, the woman grins. "I told him I trade in metaphors. He didn't like that." Evening deepens and lanterns begin to flicker to life. Glass jars with flames that throw soft shadows, cloth-covered bowls glowing from within, and one particularly ambitious setup involving glowworms and a magnifying glass. It fails, but everyone applauds the effort. The market is still noisy, but the sharpness is gone. Everything feels rounded. Haggling becomes storytelling. Trades become gifts. One woman gives away her last yam to a boy with a tired face. She says, "Come back rich, or at least funnier." A musician starts playing a gentle tune on a single-string ngoni seated beside a pyramid of oranges. Each note lands like a question, half-asked. You sit and watch as people pass, pause, listen. Even the oranges seem to lean in. You glance at your hands. There's red clay under your fingernails, pepper dust on your sash, a frog-shaped candle in your pouch, and a faint sheen of fish oil on your wrist. You feel, in the best possible way, like something the market coughed up and decided to keep. Just as you rise, a woman with a woven fan brushes past you, dropping something into your hand without looking. It's a carved wooden token, no bigger than a fingernail, shaped like a mango leaf. On the back, scratched in tiny strokes, "Rest soon." And that's when you hear it, the first soft drum. Twilight has fully arrived, and so has the music. The drums begin like a memory returning, low, pulsing, just beneath the level of conscious thought. You don't know where the rhythm starts, only that you are already inside it. It seeps up from the earth and down from the rooftops, blooming in corners and doorways as the market tilts gently into night. A lantern is lit beside you, its flame soft as breath. Another flares near the spice seller's canopy, then another, near the now empty chessboard where earlier arguments played out in whispers and pebbles. One by one the glow spreads, warm, honeyed light that folds the whole scene into something dreamlike. Shadows stretch, deepen. Your own silhouette looks longer than usual, like it's been following you through time and finally caught up. You drift toward the sound, letting it pull you like a tide. The drums are joined by a soft chorus of bells, tiny ones tied to a dancer's ankles, jingling with each practiced step. A semicircle has formed at the heart of the market, not marked by lines or fences, but by instinct. People gather around with the ease of flowers turning toward the sun. In the center, a young woman begins to move. Her feet strike the earth with a quiet force. Her hands paint invisible shapes in the air. Her waist ripples in time with the beat, each movement so fluid it seems borrowed from water. She's not alone for long. Soon a boy joins her, then another, then a man who leaps in with a clumsy flourish that earns cheers from the crowd. The music swells, not louder, but deeper. A balafone adds its mellow clinks. Then the stringed rasp of a kora slides in like silk over woven mat. The melody is circular, looping gently, never quite repeating the same way twice. You settle onto the edge of the gathering, the frog-shaped candle warm in your pouch, the mango leaf token still resting in your palm. Around you, people sway. Not quite dancing, not quite still, just joining, one by one, movement without pressure. A child leans on your knee and asks if frogs can dance. You say, only the brave ones. She nods solemnly. A woman passes with a tray of warm milk and something thick and sweet, possibly made from millet, possibly from dreams. She hands you a cup without asking. You sip. It tastes like bedtime remembered halfway through a conversation. Behind the dancers, a group of drummers exchanges glances, grins, wordless signals that shift the rhythm slightly. It slows, then flutters, then locks into a pace that feels like walking home beneath stars. Someone calls out a praise name. Another responds with a proverb. A third adds a joke so dry it practically crackles. The crowd chuckles. The dancers laugh mid-step. The market glows from within. Historians still argue whether night markets in West Africa were spiritual, economic, or just excuses to stay awake and dance until the ancestors joined in. Watching now, you're pretty sure it's all of the above. The air cools just slightly. The heat of the day softens, replaced by a breeze that carries the mingled scents of shea oil, dust, roasted maize, and smoke from wood that has been waiting all day to burn. Somewhere nearby, a basket of oranges is quietly collapsing under its own ripeness. A boy bites into one, eyes wide at the juice that drips down his wrist. A flute joins the music, for just a moment. Just long enough to make you wonder if it was ever really there. You watch as the little girl from earlier joins the dance, bare feet flying, arms spread wide like she's trying to hug the entire dusk. Her laughter cuts clean through the air, high and bright, a perfect note. The circle tightens. Then it loosens again. The market's heart expanding, contracting, like breathing, like sleeping. You realize you haven't thought about time in a while. You glance up. The sky is full of stars now, not brilliant or sharp, but gentle, blanketing the heavens like they've come to listen. One star pulses a bit brighter than the others. Someone says it's the ancestor of trade, watching to make sure nobody forgets their change. Someone else says it's a mango pit hurled so high it never came down. You believe both. The music slows. The dancers step back. A final note from the balafon lingers, then falls silent. For a moment, no one speaks. The silence holds like a pause between heartbeats. Then someone claps. Then another. Then the sound ripples out, light applause, not for show, but thanks. For the music, the food, the salt, the gossip, the gold dust, the goat that danced. For the market that was. And still is. You rise slowly, your bones a little heavier now, but your spirit oddly weightless. As you walk back through the winding alleys, past shuttered stalls and glowing coals, the market seems to nod at you, gracious, amused, slightly proud. You reach the edge of it just as the breeze picks up. The last lantern flickers once and goes out. And now, as the sounds of the market fade into night, let everything inside you slow. Imagine the scent of smoked herbs still clinging to your sash, the press of soft clay beneath your soles. Somewhere far off, a drum beats one last time, not to call, not to summon, but just to remind. The breeze is cooler now, brushing against your skin like an old friend. Above you, the stars are settling into their places, each one holding a story no longer in need of telling. You are warm, full, and still. The memory of laughter floats past like incense, lingering sweetly, then dissolving into stillness. You remember the fish seller who danced, the child who bartered with a drawing, the woman who traded a whistle for pepper and a joke. You recall the taste of palm wine and ataya, the feel of glass beads in your palm, the quiet of prayer washing over dust. It's all still with you. Let your breathing match the soft rhythm of a canoe rocking gently in the river. Let your thoughts drift like smoke above a cooling fire. You are no longer walking, no longer watching. You're simply resting, where gold glints, goats plot, and stories wait, like fruit ripening in the dark. Sweet dreams, market traveler. The night is yours now.